Hello and welcome to this next episode of First Deal Diaries. I have got a very special guest with me today, Jim Hobson, who's become a dear friend of mine, and we met 2 years ago on Property Mastermind. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invite, Danielle. It's wonderful to be on your podcast, and what a great time I'm going to have having a conversation today.
Good, look forward to it. So, Jim, as I said, we met 2 years ago when we started the Mastermind with Simon Zucci. Tell me, what were you doing before that?
Oh, well, I've had a bit of a roller coaster life. Brought up in Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England, and I didn't particularly enjoy school. I guess like most young lads up in places like that, I didn't really get on with it, and I wanted a sense of adventure, and so I decided at the sprightly old age of 16 to join the army. I was only really going to do a couple of years in the army just to try and scratch that itch, and I ended up doing just shy of 25 years. I had a great time, so I joined at 16 and left when I was about 41, which was in 2018, and since then I've been working in project management and strategic business and business analysis. So I've been doing that for about 7 years now.
Gosh, time flies, hey?
Yes.
Excellent. The business that you've got at the moment is your own consultancy?
Yeah, so I have the two businesses. So I've got my consulting firm, which I do IT consulting, project management type work. And then I've also got my property business as well, which is Red Panda Property. So yeah, it keeps me busy, two businesses, but really enjoyed running them both. And it's been great. I've really enjoyed doing it.
Excellent. And why property? How did you end up on the Mastermind course 2 years ago?
Yeah, now there's a story. So for a few years, I've always had an eye on acquiring, buying some property. I always wanted to kind of create that passive income, but I didn't really know how to buy a house. I guess like everybody else, right? So you go to school, you get taught algebra and everything else. No one really teaches you how to manage money. And
Yeah.
then you find out through your parents and friends that the way you buy a house is you save up your deposit, 25%. You go out and get the mortgage for the rest of it for 75%. You buy the property. And I wanted to do that. And so I bought a house, lived in that years ago. And then I just thought, well, I'm going to have to save. If I want some investment property, I'm going to have to save some money, right? So I just started saving, and I thought, and it can be a struggle, right? As house prices are going up, it's been a constant increase. After the crash, all the house prices are going up, and so I just thought it's almost becoming a bit unachievable. And I was sat in work one day, and me and a mate, we were chatting, we were having a coffee, and he wanted to get into property, and he'd come across this networking meeting, which was just on the outskirts of Cheltenham, called Property Investors Network, and so I went to that, and we could delve into some of the stories actually from that very first networking meeting later. So I went to that, met some great people, and I started talking to some people in that room about it's not just about the deposit, it's not just about getting that mortgage. There's loads of different ways you can buy property. So I kept going back to the networking meeting, meeting loads of people, and then as a result, I thought I could really do with some extra education. Signed up to a couple of their training courses. And then I signed up to the 12-month program, which is where I met you in October 2023.
What did you come to that mastermind expecting? Because you hadn't at this point bought any properties, you didn't have any experience, although your wife is an accidental landlord, but
Yeah, that's
any
correct.
sort of the actual serious investing side that you had no experience. So what did you expect to achieve during that year?
Yeah, it's a great question because I felt like I came with a lot of knowledge. I like to read. I was reading books. I was doing the usual YouTube research and looking at all the different providers of training and content and building up that knowledge base. And when I came on to the mastermind program, I actually realized it didn't matter how much preparation I could have done, and I could have read all the books that are out there. I had only scratched the very surface of it. And it wasn't until I actually started spending time with experienced investors like yourself and other people in that room, with the people leading it, the mentors, and Simon and Andy and Mark at the time, who were taking us through our monthly sessions, that actually what I really needed to do was listen to those, focus on what they were saying. There was all a big joke about trust the process, and that was the running joke in our mastermind year. But it really was the right thing to do, right? So it was follow what was being said, and I guess that was pretty easy for me because I'd spent 25 years being told what to do anyway.
Yeah.
And be here at this time, carrying this bit of equipment, doing this sort of thing, and so that worked for me. And so I was able to kind of learn that process, keep spinning the dial, moving forward. And it eventually allowed me to get enough education and enough knowledge to actually trigger my first deal. So it was whilst we were on that mastermind course in the November, I'd secured a property, but the vendor pulled out. And that was going to be a great project. That was turning a 3-bed terraced house into a 5-bed HMO. But the vendor got cold feet just before Christmas, pulled out. And then it was in the January that found another house, and it was that deal that we're going to talk about today.
Okay, excellent. So let's deep dive into that. Then we want all the nitty gritty, all the challenges, all the numbers, all the learnings we can get from that. How did you find it, and why did you choose this one?
Yeah, so this is I actually met a guy at a PIN meeting, and he was effectively a deal sourcer slash project manager. And so I thought this could be quite a good way in getting into property. And I was busy doing my IT work. And so I effectively used the guy to source the property, present that to me, look at the numbers. We balanced up the deal, visited some other projects, and then executed on it. And so
Did you say you went
whole
to
host of
see another one of his projects?
yes, yeah. So I
Right.
went to visit.
Sorry, Jim, you did a decent amount of due diligence on him.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So that's something I really wanted to do. And again, that was some stuff we were taught, right? So was get under the hood, see what else is going on. And so yeah, visited other projects, walked around the area, drove around the area, obviously viewed the property. I think we did it two times, 3 times, in and around, see where all the potential pitfalls and problems could be. Instructed the architects, she did the drawings, and then we could walk around the property, looking at how it was all going to lay out. We were putting an extension on the back of the property to create an extra bedroom. So it was it was a 3-bed house. It was kind of like in a terrace. But it's the front door. You walk down a little alleyway as opposed to it
Oh,
being in the front of the house. You walk down an alleyway to get into the property. And it was laid out pretty well, actually. There was a converted loft, which was great. And it had a couple of bedrooms and a single bathroom, first floor at the rear of the property. And so it was ripe for an extension at the back to put on, which could then create an extra bedroom. And then so I went through, bought the property. That was when was that? So I purchased that in June of 24, something like the 9th of June 2024 that went through. And then it was at that point that it was ready to get the builders in. But we hit a bit of a snag very soon after I purchased the property. And this is one of my due diligence points that I learned, that what I hadn't done is I hadn't confirmed with the builder and with the architect about the drainage at the back of the property, and in particular the depth of the drainage that was existing. And so where the extension was going to go, which the architect had drawn, who created on the drawings, we found out that the drains were actually too close to the top of the soil, in effect, that weight of the extension would break those drains. And in order to reinforce them was going to cost 20 grand, 20 odd grand to kind of sort that problem out. So we then had to go into a redesign. And
okay.
now,
I seem
now
to remember, weren't you in Florida when this happened?
yeah, we were on holiday, and so I was doing phone calls back to the UK, 5-hour time difference, 5:30 in the morning, to speak to people back in the UK at their lunchtime as it was then, sort out the redesign, and then get those phone calls done, and then we'd be in the car and go off to Disney for the day. And so so that was quite challenging because it kind of took away from what I was trying to do. I was trying to be on holiday with my family and put my feet up, but property
It
investors
must have been
never rest, right?
reassuring having a project manager, though, to handle all of that whilst you were on holiday.
Yeah. One of my learnings was in that regard that when hiring project managers, you need to ensure that those project managers are going to present you with the solutions when the problems arise. And that's something that I would do as a project manager. So if I'm working in IT and I knew my client was going to have a problem, I wouldn't just present the problem, I would present the solution as well, or my recommended solution. So that was a little bit challenging, and sometimes that I was having to present the solution back. There was some advice going back and forward, but I would definitely recommend people when you're recruiting PMs to do your property projects. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with recruiting a PM. You pay for good experience, and that's really going to get your project completed in good order, especially if you haven't got the time or the experience to do it. And I'm not a builder, and so yeah, make sure you do your due diligence on PMs and exercise them when you're having a discussion with them. Give them scenarios. If this happens, what would you do? If this happens, what would you do? And then not only does that help you get some reassurance, but it also gets them to understand how you work, right?
Yes.
And so and how they can present solutions to you, and because effectively they're working for you, right? You're giving them money. They need to be giving you those solutions. And so that redesign was done, and actually between the three of us, the architect, PM, and myself, we managed to configure the building in such a way that we could fit 6 bedrooms into it, including 4 of them as being en suites. And then we could have 2 of them share a communal, and all the rooms were of good size that we still met all the council licensing requirements, which is obviously the really important thing to do. Is you've got to make sure you hit your licensing requirements. And so that redesign was some great work between the three of us to figure that out, and then we could go into the build. And that probably took about 3 weeks. So we're now eating into build time. So we've acquired the project at the beginning of June, and you really want to get started as quick as possible. But we're now back off holiday, still going through redesign, and then we hit the next problem, which was because there was no extension, the original builder no longer wanted the build. It's because he didn't think it was financially viable for him, and so he decided to walk away from the project, and we now had to find another builder. So the PM went out and found a couple of build companies, suggested some recommendations back to myself based on reviews, work in the area. But we're now still eating into project delivery time. And so we're now hitting August. We're in the middle of August, conscious that properties are bought on bridging loans.
Yes.
They need to be, you have only generally 9 to 12 months to get that paid back. So you need to get that project built. So my concern is I need to get the build commencing as soon as possible, because I want to get that refinance done as soon as possible so I can get off the bridge and get the property let out. That's ultimately what we're doing, right? We're creating properties for people to live in, and we want to get those completed. So I would my next really important tip is to make sure you are 100% happy with a design. You have to be completely happy with what's been presented to you from a design perspective. And if at any point you have a question over that design before purchasing the property, don't purchase. Do not purchase. And that's something that I've learned since then. And obviously the property was now in my name, and we're having to go for a redesign. So there was no way I could just back out the deal because I owned it. And
do you think you could have learned these things in a classroom, on a training course, or did you learn by the doing?
I think there's a bit of a 50-50 that I definitely won't be the first person who's ever gone through that. And so other people will have had those experiences. But it's that sort of unknown unknowns. You don't quite know what's coming down the track. Now, would I want the perfect property deal? I don't think I would. I want to learn by experience, right? And so I've had those problems. There was no major structural problems. But yeah, we had to put a little bit of extra iron work in, steel work in as part of the redesign. But I did have some problems with figuring that design. That's great. I now know for future what those good designs are going to look like. And I definitely learned some good questions to ask. And I think, could I have learned them in a classroom? Yeah, I reckon I could now impart that knowledge on people. I could stand at the front of a classroom and say, this is the extra bits you want to do on your due diligence when you're doing your project, in terms of finalizing design before acquiring the property, ensure you got all the right people in place, because again, it all boils down to the timelines. You've got to get that property started in order to finish within the time of the bridging loan, if you are using a bridging loan to acquire and develop the property. And so probably a bit of a mix, I think, to answer your question. Some in the classroom, but so learning by experience, you can't put any value on that.
Absolutely. So, Jim, I was obviously spent a lot of time talking to you as this development went on, and for me, you had two further stumbling blocks. One was the relationship you had with your project manager, and the second one, I think I remember that towards the end there was an issue with the bridging company, and that you had a part chimney removed or something. Was there? Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's right.
Do that one, and then we'll go back to the PM.
Yeah, I'll talk about that one first, actually. So as part of the redesign, so I'd acquired a property. I'd used a bridging loan to acquire it. But that was based on the old design, and what I hadn't done is I hadn't engaged properly with the broker and the bridging company to inform them of the full redesign, and that was a mistake on my part. Again, it's learning by experience, and what I should have done is I should have gone to the bridging company, explained the situation, and so we ended up having to have a conversation about the redesign. And the redesign brought a little bit more risk to the bridging company, and so we had to have a discussion about the interest rate on the bridging loan had to be increased because they were more exposed on the project as part of the redesign. So another learning point is if at any point you are having a redesign, before moving ahead, just clear that with the people that if you're using finance, if you're using bridging money, if you're using mortgage money, go and speak to those companies. They're all great. All these companies, all they ever want to do is help you out. But just make sure you go and have a conversation with them. Just explain what that design change is. I think that's really important. And
They're
everyone,
generally not the big, scary
yeah,
business that we think they are, bridging companies. They do need to mitigate their risks ultimately, so they will be helpful where they can be.
absolutely, absolutely. Everyone's just trying to come to a workable solution, and they were great. And we had some really good conversations to rectify the situation. It was rectified very quickly. They were very fair, and then we just carried on with the project. Yeah, but going back to the first point, and again, more learning points really. The building was going well. Everything's progressing. We're putting all the stud works in for the walls and new bathrooms, and we're getting all the parts. But one of the things I think people really need to be careful of is when they're employing people is to ensure that there is no conflict of interests between all the different stakeholders within the build team and within the project team. And the build team were great. They were very good. They were there 8 o'clock in the morning. They'd be working all day. They'd be there till last thing in the working day. Sometimes there on Saturdays and Sundays, finishing off work, which was fantastic because they knew it had to be a speedy business. As soon as someone identifies a building company that's producing work in a very rapid, efficient, and skillful way, people want to use that company. And that's what happened in this situation. So the PM that I was using, he'd identified other projects for other investors, and they built a relationship, and I felt that relationship sometimes was impacting on my project because my project was the one that was in train. My one was the one that needed building. And actually, I didn't need those builders being squirreled off elsewhere onto other projects or to go and do quotes or to look at other work for other people because I was paying for their time to do my project. And so I would ensure in future projects and would definitely recommend that people make sure that they have a line in their contracts, and you must always have contracts with all stakeholders involved. Make sure there's a line in that contract that keeps that separation and doesn't allow for relationships to form between PMs and build teams, which could end up detracting from the development that you've got ongoing at the moment. And it was a line I remember we heard on our mastermind year where it was it Mark that said it, where write your contracts as enemies and depart as friends. And so you want to make sure that those contracts are absolutely nailed down. And when you get that, and then you put that in a drawer, and you hopefully never have to look at it again. But you just have to make sure that you're protected, right? Because I'm the one responsible for that building. I'm one, or my company, Red Panda, has borrowed the money. It's going to be me who has to go and answer to everybody if that project doesn't get finished promptly, if it doesn't get finished correctly. So it's definitely the onus. And again, more learning on my part, and learning I'd like to share with all the listeners here today is get those contracts sewn up, and don't worry about what you might think is offending the other party by putting certain lines in. If people are going to be offended by lines in contracts that they may seem as a bit unfair, my recommendation would be don't work with those people. I would absolutely, anyone who has a line in a contract that serves both parties and makes sure that the whole thing is fair, they're the people you want to work with. But if anyone is getting concerned on your other side, other stakeholders getting concerned with lines to protect you in contracts, there are a million people out there you can work with. Walk away and go and find someone else who will accept those terms.
So let's talk through some of the numbers on this one then. I've got here a purchase price of 212,000. Did that remain the same?
Yeah. So yeah, I could talk you through those. Yeah. 212 on the purchase price. On a comparable on that street, probably around about 225. I reckon I probably could have negotiated a little bit further down, but again, that was stuff we were taught. But I was getting a little bit nervous about negotiating, right? Because you don't want to upset people at the other end, and you don't want to be coming across as a little bit rude and a little bit insulting. But you also have to think that it has to be a win on both sides, right? So we want to do everything ethically. We want to make sure that we're doing right by the seller, but also make sure you're doing right by yourself as well. So yeah, 212, but not a bad figure in the end. Total cost of build, fees, and a few of the sundries in there, around about 150k, which is around about the right amount for a HMO. People might be quite shocked at that figure for people who haven't done HMOs before, but HMOs are expensive. They are expensive to build, but they're expensive for a reason, right? You're converting a house into a completely different layout. It's got a different use class. It's not a family of 3 or 4 living in there with 2 adults, 2 children. You're going to have multiple adults. They all need their space. So yeah, so around about 150k all in. And then after I'd refinanced out, I had about 90,000 left in the deal, which is okay. That's not too bad. A little bit of that was because we were slightly downvalued from the revaluation, but these things happen, okay, and I can't get too upset about that. So about 90,000 left in, but when we look at the monthly cash flow, which I'll talk about now, it makes that 90,000 a bit more palatable, and so I get in the region after paying all the bills. Obviously, I pay all the bills for the tenants, 6 tenants that are in there. I'm left with around about per year, around about 16,000 net. And then, so that is a rough cash flow of around about 1,400 per calendar month. Which,
Good.
yeah, that's effectively, that's that building paying my company a salary of 1,400 just for being a building with tenants in it, and it's done to a really good spec. So I hold my hat off to everyone who was involved in that regard for the design, helping me with the design, with the team that were involved in doing everything, and we've been able to get that number up to that net 1,400 a month because it's not a vanilla HMO. We've got ensuite bathrooms. I've supplied TVs in every room. I've provided additional storage. There's some nice storage racks. Even the beds, they're double beds. They've got lovely big thick mattresses on them as well that are super comfortable. There's some lovely carpet in all our rooms. My wife did the feature walls and picked the colours out, and so we've got some lovely, nice. It breaks the room up a bit. Some nice blinds as well,
Finishes,
and so
isn't it? That helps.
yeah, so we're allowed. That allows us to charge a little bit more per month, and people want that. That's what people want, right? When we're not in the 80s and the 90s anymore, people aren't just. They don't want to live in low quality housing, nor should we be providing low quality housing. There's enough of that on the market.
Absolutely.
There's a hang up from those decades, and so we need to be providing good quality homes that people can live in. And so when you do all the calculations, and for those who like to do calculations and formulas, it's a return on investment of around about 18-19%. So For those who don't understand ROI, that if it was 20%, that's 1/5 of 100. That means I'm going to get my money back in just slightly less than 5 years on that property. It comes with a but. Because the mortgage is just a bricks and mortar valuation, because it was a HMO that hadn't been trading, I'm only on a 2-year deal. When it comes in around just over a year and a half's time, when I come to start the refinance process, that deal will be, or that property will be valued on its commercial aspects. And so it'll be based on its income and how it's performing. So the actual commercial valuation will be a lot higher. So as much as there's money left in the deal now, in 18 months' time, that money will come out of that property. And so I'll be able to use that on other projects.
Is there anything you would have done differently if you were going to do that deal again?
Yeah. Definitely getting the design locked in and absolutely confirmed. I would definitely have tightened up the contracts, as previously spoken. But in terms of the actual building and what it provides, a 6-bed HMO with 4 en suites and 1 communal, I don't think I would, because I think it's a lovely location. It's very close to the city centre. It's in Gloucester. It's very close to the city centre, so it's in a really, really good place, and it really serves the tenants well.
Excellent.
Always pick out a good management company as well. You want to be speaking with all different management companies, and I spoke to several, and you want to find the ones that resonate with you. You want to be asking them, how do they bring tenants in? How do they bring tenants out? Now, mine are all professionals, so they're all on individual tenancy agreements at the moment, and you also want to make sure what the ethics and the morality is like with that management company, right? So are they going to leave them alone if there's problems, or are they going to get on top of those problems and fix them straight away? And you need it to be the latter, because ultimately you've created a business, you've created a property that is cash flowing, and it's bringing money out, because that's what we're doing it for, right? It's a business. We need that business to cash flow, but they're human beings that are in that property. We need to look after them, and
Yes.
we need to make sure that they are being their needs are being catered for, and you're providing the service that you've promised to provide them. So definitely go out and find a good management company. I use the one in Gloucester, which are great, and it's you've got to keep building that relationship with the management company. A lot of people think that property investment is just buy the property, it'll turn into a cash machine, let it do its thing, and I just disagree with that. And I think you have to. The onus is on you as the owner to keep in touch with the management company and keep developing the relationship with them, and to make sure that their needs are being catered for. I also do something else. I don't know if many people would do this. We haven't spoken about this before, Danny, in that lots of people use landlord letters, right? They use landlord letters to go out and reach prospective landlords to find properties. So those who have been in property investment for a while, they'll know this. For those who are new to property, it's a great way to get landlords to find out that you're in the market for investment properties. But I do it slightly differently, in that, yes, I send out landlord letters, but I also use exactly the same platform to send letters to my tenants. And so I mail them and I say, right, so here's a reminder of your responsibilities, but also, is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything that you need in your property? Now, I know there's a guy wants a Wi-Fi extender in his room, because I spoke to him a few weeks ago. So I'll go out and he won't pay for that. I'll pay for that. We'll get that into his room. I also know one of my other tenants wants some new curtains put in the bedroom. Well, I could go around knocking on the door, but they might not be there. I also don't have their contact details, because that's a management function. But what I do know is the address of the property, because I own it. So I just write them letters, and I'd recommend anyone does that. Write them letters, keep your relationship going with the tenant as well, because if they feel invested in, they're going to stay in that property, and you're going to have them for years to come.
That's great advice. Jim, I've got one question for you on this. I think I know your answer. £1,500 cash flow per month, over 18% ROI. Was this a deal?
Deal.
Excellent. I think it was a good deal. So we're just going to go into some quick fire questions now. Jim, where's your dream home location?
Oh, I've always had an affinity to America, the United States. And about 10 years ago, we went on a holiday to California and I fell in love with the Californian coastline, right in the north, near a place called Monterey, just south of San Francisco. When I retire, you'll find me over there.
Sounds lovely. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, far too much of it. I drink far too much, but coffee all day.
Which has been tougher, the army or property?
Oh, property. I haven't been doing it long enough to. I've only been doing it a few years, and so my experience is still going. So, property's harder at the moment, but it will come easier.
One word to describe that first deal.
Challenging.
What's your biggest strength as an investor?
I really like building relationships with people. And I'm quite an extrovert. I like going out, shaking hands, speaking to people, engaging, and have a bit of fun with them as well. And so, definitely, I like to get out there, motivate, support, and help people.
Have you got a go-to tool or app for anything in your property journey?
So I love Property Filter, right? So some of you will have heard of Property Filter, some of you won't. I'd recommend going out and look at it. Now you have to pay for it. It doesn't come free, but what it allows you to do is to identify properties, get them into a pipeline, and then just follow through, as opposed to using what everyone's done before, Rightmove and an Excel spreadsheet. It effectively brings those two together.
Favorite podcast or book?
There's two guys that you and I know, Timothy Witt and Phil Bygrave, and they started a podcast, it was about 2 years ago or so. I really like theirs, Financial Freedom Podcast.
Excellent. One thing you'll never compromise on?
Ethics.
Nice one. Finish the sentence. Property has taught me.
If done correctly, will provide everlasting income.
Excellent. Finally, describe your journey so far in 3 words.
Exciting, educational, tiring.
Yeah. Excellent. So, Jim, what's next for Red Panda Properties and how can people get in touch with you?
So what's next? I'll tell you what, when you and I go out and do viewings, because we do viewings together because we live quite close, we see far too many empty buildings, right? We see unloved buildings. And so what I'd like to do is I want to find out more about those, see if there's anything we can do. There is a housing shortage in this country. We know that. Okay. So why can't we just fix the ones we've got? And we need to do that. There's far too many empty homes. Let's get them fixed. Let's get them back on the market. How can people get in touch? You can Google Red Panda Property, where you'll come across my website, and you can email me, set up a call. I don't charge for calls. I just like having conversations with people, clearly. So get in touch. We'll have a little conversation.
That's brilliant. Jim, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really interesting to hear about your journey.
Thank you very much, Danielle, and congratulations on getting the podcast off the ground, and I hope to be a guest sometime again soon.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Jim. If you've enjoyed this episode, then do give us a like, follow, and perhaps even think about subscribing. As always, if you are doing a first deal and you would be interested in having a chat with me, then drop me a message, and I will see you all very soon.
Thank you for listening to First Deal Diaries. This episode is brought to you by Salty Air Design, where story meets design and brands breathe deep. See you next time for another First Deal story.